Morning, everyone. Myself Lakshana Pratap Singh. I am the court master for this court. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Please. With the permission of the honorable judges, I may start the I may start the proceedings of this court by the introduction of the honorable judges.
Yes.
Today on the today on the bench we have Mr. Neeraj Bharadwaj sir. Neeraj Bharadwaj sir is a practicing advocate from past 15 years. Sir practices in both criminal as well as civil side of Delhi High Court. Some of the landmark judgments obtained by Sir are Prempal versus State, Mohar Singh versus State, and etc. And on the panel, we also have Mr. Yogesh Verma sir. Yogesh Verma sir is in practice from more than 18 years. Initially, sir started practicing with Honorable Justice Mr. Suresh Kumar Kat and assisted him till his elevation as judge in 2008. Sir is in the year 2012 was appointed as an additional public prosecutor in Delhi High Court and assisted various judges till 2014. Sir has also assisted the Honorable Court as an amicus query. Presently, Sir is handling Delhi riots case and various other high profile cases. With this, I may proceed with some brief rules. Every team will have a maximum of 30 minutes for the oral submissions and maximum 5 minutes for the rebuttal or rejoinder. No speaker will be permitted to address the court for more than 20 minutes. Teams are requested to notify the division of time between two speakers as well as the time for rebuttal at the beginning. Teams will be intimated on every 20 to 30 minutes. Teams will be joining by their team code and by speaker 1 and as speaker 2. So kindly the name of this mood code, kindly change your name to the team code and as your speaker 1 or speaker 2. With the permission of the honorable judges, I may start the proceedings.
Yes. You can start.
For prosecution, we have team 523.
Sir, for prosecution, it's team 517.
Apologies, my lord. For prosecution, we have team 517. You may start. You may start by telling me the time division you have, and also by putting the same in the chat box.
There is only one person from 517.
Sir, the second person is joining. There is a network error.
Both the speakers for team 517 are connected.
Yes, sir.
With the permission of the honorable judges, they may start the proceedings for the prosecution.
Yes, start.
Good morning, Honorable Judges. We are here by the counsel of plaintiff as Speaker 1 and Speaker 2. Honorable Justice, the plaintiff submits to the jurisdiction of Honorable Court of New Delhi, Patiala High Court under Section 120B, 489B, 489C, 121, 123, and 201 of IPC, and Section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of Unlawful Prevention Act 1967. By virtue of this court, has power to entertain against appellant. Honorable Justice, may I recite the facts of the case? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
May I recite
Yes.
the facts of the case?
Yes.
Much obliged. Honorable Justice. On 24th Feb 2015, PS Special Cell, New Delhi, received source information that accused Sameer, along with his associate, namely Monu, has collected huge consignment of FICN from another associate, Kalu Mama, on 23rd Feb 2015, and started from Malda to Delhi on the same day by Faraka Express, which would arrive at Old Delhi railway station in the morning of 25th Feb 2015. Accordingly, a team of officers of PA Special Cell Delhi Police arrived at the concerned platform where the aforesaid train arrived, and after the identification of the aforesaid two accused persons by the secret source, detained Samir, accused 1, and Monu, accused 2, in the general coach of Faraka Express, which arrived at platform number 5 on Old Delhi railway station on 25 Feb 2015. As per the information of the informer, both the suspects are apprehended and primary search was carried out. On search of the black color canvas shoulder bag of the accused, 250 notes of high quality FSCNs in denomination of rupees 2000 having total face value equivalent to rupees 5 lakh were recovered. The same was kept in the secret cavity of the bag were recovered and seized in the presence of witness. Similarly, on search of maroon color canvas shoulder bag of the accused Mono, 250 notes of high quality FSCNs in denomination of rupees 2000, having total face value to rupees 5 lakh were recovered. A detailed seizure memo was prepared in the presence of independent witness and the police team. On interrogation, both the accused disclosed that they had collected these aforesaid FSCNs from the associate Kalumama, president of Kalecher. They also revealed that out of this consignment, FSCN of rupees 5 lakh denomination was to be delivered in Pulwama, Jammu and Kashmir to Peter, who would have contacted them. They further informed that FACN's notes were to be utilized from bomb blasts on Indian Army convoy on 15 August 2015. Accordingly, Samir, accused 1, and Mono, accused 2, were arrested. On personal search of Samir and Mono, certain things were recovered from his possession and the same was seized by them. After the seizure from crime scene, on return to PS Special Cell, an FIR was registered. The Special Cell Delhi Police forwarded the seized FSCN to SPSL CBI Delhi for the expert opinion, which declared that the FSCNs were the fake currency notes. On custodial examination by Special Cell, disclosed about the role of Kalu Mama of Kalijanak and Peter of Barod, MP in the sale purchase of FSCN seized. As per the instructions of Kalu Mama, they were asked to travel to Pulwama after reaching Delhi and immediately contact and deliver to FSCN notes to Peter. He further revealed that Kalu Mama was taking instructions from someone else who was doing the main planning. Delhi police staff searched the house and premises of Peter on 27/2/2015, but he was found absconding. The investigation of the case was taken over by NIA on 11/5/2015 under Section 120B, 489B, and 489C of IPC. Section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967 were invoked on pursuit of the case record. Circumstances of recovery, examination of the expert opinion, report of FCL CBI New Delhi, opinion the seized FSCN to be of high quality, and approval of competent authority issued under Section 6 Clause 3 of the Investigation of High Quality Counterfeit Indian Currency Offence Rule 2013. The accused Samir and Monu were examined in police custody of NIA after obtaining police custody from this honorable court. The accused Samir admitted his involvement in the case and disclosed the involvement of other accused persons Kalumama and Peter. He was also informed that Kalumama used to take instructions from Sohail, who was planning to carry out bomb blasts in Pulwama on Indian Army convoy by 15th August. He further informed that Sohail was also in touch with Lashkar-e-Taiba senior people from Pakistan. The accused, Mono, admitted his involvement in the case and disclosed the involvement of other accused persons, namely Kalumama, Peter, and Sohail. He further informed that Kalumama had received instructions from Pakistan and Bangladesh with a blast code दुल्हन को सजाने का वक्त आ गया है. Blast as soon as FSC currency reaches Pulwama to Sohail. The CDR records of the of SIM cards used by accused persons were obtained during the interrogation of the mobile service provider. The contents of the mobile phones containing contact lists of the phones recovered from the accused were obtained from expert opinion of CRTIN New Delhi. These were analyzed, from which they obtained that they were having links with each other from the past continent months. A team of NIA investigators was also sent to search the house and premises of accused Peter on 27th May 2015, but he was found absconding. During the investigation, the field team of NIA campaigning at Broad district Agarmalda, Madhya Pradesh, got information that accused Peter has been admitted in SK Hospital, Rajasthan for treatment of poisoning. On receipt of above information, a team of officers was sent to Rajasthan on 19/6/2015 for investigation and to verify the information. The team confirmed that the content accused of the incident case, Peter, was indeed admitted in SK Hospital as a case of poisoning, where he expired during the treatment on 22nd June. The cause death was suicide. During course of investigation, a team was sent to Malda on 23/6/2015, and it was successful in establishing the real identity of the suspect, Kalumama, wanted in the instant case for providing the FSPN to accuse Samir and Monu at Malda, which was seized from them on 25th Feb 2015. The NIA team examined Kalumama and searched his house, and certain things were recovered on 23/6/2015. During investigation, two bank accounts statements of Kalumama and one bank account statement of his wife, namely Simrit Bibi, were also ascertained, and copy of his account opening forms and related KYC forms were obtained. Accused Kalumama was questioned about the involvement and the role of accused Sohail, but he gave evasive answers about the same. It will not be out of place to mention that he did not provide any detail of whereabouts of Suhail. After establishing the identity and involvement of the suspect in the instant case, accused Kalumama was arrested on 23/6/2015 from Malda, observing legal formalities and produced before the local court in Malda. Later, he was examined in the police custody. During examination in police custody, Kalumama revealed that he had received assistance from accused Sahil on several occasions in the past for further smuggling transactions. He further revealed that Suhail was the main conspirator and he was in constant touch with the Lashkar Taiban from Pakistan and Bangladesh. He further revealed that the Suhail was planning to execute bomb blasts on Indian Army convoy on 15 August. On 24/6/2015, NIA team got information through its sources on 26/2015 that Suhail was seen in the morning with one unknown person along with Kalmama. Accused Kalumama was taken to Palatinate village, Malda, for pointing out locations where they want to set the bomb, and he met Suhail. Based on his disclosures, sketches were prepared. Kalumama pointed out the places where he took both Samir and Munu from Malda town railway station and sent them to his house from one youth of nearby village on his motorcycle. He also pointed out his own house where delivery of ecstasy and of denomination of rupees 10 lakh took place in the presence of Suhail. During the course of investigation, the house of Suhail was searched number of times, but incriminating substances could not be recovered as Kalumama had destroyed all the evidences. NIA team found one public witness named Shahrukh Khan who claimed that he had seen Suhail on 26 2015 with two persons, that is Kalumama and one unknown person in black kurta pajama. Same day, concerned BSF post officer was requested to join the investigation, but unfortunately, even he could not provide us any unnecessary information about the infiltration at the India-Bangladesh border. The police report has been submitted after that, after completing the investigation. Therefore, the Honorable Court may take cognizance of the offence on the basis of above said police report. Honorable Justice, may I issue raise the issue?
Yes, yes, proceed.
Much obliged.
Please mention the time division.
15 minutes for each speaker.
Okay.
My first argument is Mead and others act commits an act in furtherance of common intention. According to the above circumstances of the case, Smeed and others are acting in furtherance of common intention, that is bomb blast, which they will be going to blast on 15 August on Indian Army convoy. Section 34 of IPC. Acts done by several persons in furtherance of common intention. When a criminal act is done by several persons in furtherance of common intention of all, each of such persons is liable for the act in the same manner as if it done by him alone. I would enlighten some ingredients of Section 34. Like every crime, Section 34 also has some essentials that need to be fulfilled in order to hold a person liable for crime penalty. These are as follows: a criminal act done by several persons. The most important ingredient is that a criminal act must be done, that too by several persons. Committing of an act or omitting of an act of criminal nature must be done. The acts committed by different confederates in criminal action may be different. However, all must be in one way or the other participants are engaged in criminal enterprises. The essence of Section 34 is simultaneous consensus of the minds, that is, prior meeting of the minds, which accused Samir Kalamama Monu Peter Suhail was having the prior meeting of minds. The common intention of all persons to commit the criminal act. As stated above, the essence of joint liability under Section 34 lies in the existence of a common intention to do a criminal act in furtherance of the common objective of all members of that group. The term common intention implies prior or previous consent or prior meeting of minds, and also the participation of all the members of that group. The act done by different persons of that group may differ in degree and character, but these acts must be actuated by the same common intention between all persons. The main act was to the bomb blast on 15 August on army convoy. There was a prior meeting of minds. Even their acts were different, but their main act was to bomb blast on 15 August on Indian Army convoy. In order to fix joint liability, a criminal act of the entire group is a condition precedent. It is essential that the court finds that in furtherance of the common intention, some criminal act has been done with the group's participation. The person who instigates or aids in the commission of the crime should physically do an act for the purpose of facilitating the commission of the actual planned crime. In a case law, Paras Raja Minaika Rao versus State of AP says that Section 34 really means that if two or more persons intentionally do a common thing jointly, it is just the same as if each of them has done intentionally. It is well recognized canon of criminal jurisprudence that the court cannot distinguish between co-conspirators, nor they can inquire even if it were possible as to the part taken by each in the crime. When parties go with common purpose to execute the common object, each and every person becomes responsible for the act of each and every other in furtherance of the common purpose. As the purpose is so common, so must be the responsibility. All are guilty of the principal offense, not of abetment only. Therefore, learned counsel from the plaintiffs submits that they should bring under the ambit of Section 34 of IPC because they are acting in furtherance of common intention. Honorable Justice, I would like to call Speaker 2 for further issue raised.
Okay.
I request all the participants and the honorable judges to kindly open their chat box during all the time of the proceedings.
वहां से mute करो। Computer में mute करो। Good morning, judges. May it please the court if I proceed with the second argument?
Your voice is echoing.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes.
May it please the court if I proceed with the second argument?
Yes, yes.
The second argument raises that Sameer and others are liable for the offense under Section 120B of IPC. 120A of IPC says criminal conspiracy. When two or more persons agree to do or cause to be done an illegal act or an act which is not illegal by illegal means, such as agreement is designated as criminal conspiracy. Two or more persons must agree. It was held in state of HP versus Krishna Lal that the offense of the criminal conspiracy consists in a meeting of mind of two or more persons for agreeing to do or causing to be done an illegal act or an act by illegal means and the performance of an act in terms of thereof. Illegal act to constitute the offense under this section, there must be an agreement to do an act which is contrary to or forbidden by law. It may be noted that it is illegal to conspire with another an act which may not crime if done alone. The main motive of this section is to make even the basic stage of the criminal crime punishable. Illegal means agreement to do an act which, even though lawful by unlawful means, constitute conspiracy. The end does not justify the means. As mentioned in case Ram Narayan Popli versus CBI, the court laid down several aspects of criminal conspiracy and an object to be accomplished, a plan or scheme embodying means to accomplish that object, an agreement or understanding between two or more of the accused persons whereby they become definitely committed to cooperate for the accomplishment of the object by the means embodied in the agreement or by any effectual means and in the jurisdiction where the statute required an overt act. Proof of conspiracy. The crime is inherently psychological in nature. The proof of such an act is also difficult. It can be ascertained by the fact that some act can kept a secret. However, this does not constitute an essential element of the conspiracy. It can be done through direct evidence or circumstantial evidence. As mentioned in the case Bhagwan Sarup Lai Bisan Lai was the state of Maharashtra. The fact that there was an agency in conspire may prove that there was involvement of this person in the act. Section 120B talks about the punishment of the conspiracy. Whoever is a party to criminal conspiracy to commit an offense punishable with death, imprisonment for life, or rigorous imprisonment for a term of 2 years or upwards shall, where no express provisions is made in this code for the punishment of such conspiracy, be punished in the same manner as if he has abetted such offense. Whoever is party to the criminal conspiracy other than the criminal conspiracy to commit an offense punishable as aforesaid shall be punished with imprisonment of either description of the term for a term not exceeding 6 months or with fine or with both. So, Samir and others should be liable under the ambit of this section. The second part of the second argument talks about the Samir and others are liable for the offense under section 489B and 489C of IPC. 489B of IPC talks about using a genuine, false, or counterfeit currency notes or banknotes. Whoever sells to or buys or receives from any other person or otherwise traffics in or uses as genuine any forged or counterfeit currency notes or banknote, knowing or having the reason to believe the same to be forged or counterfeit, shall be punished with or with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years and shall be liable to fine. Section 489C of IPC talks about the possession of the forged or counterfeit currency notes or banknotes. Whoever has in his possession any forged or counterfeit notes, currency notes or banknotes, knowing or having reason to believe the same to be forged or counterfeit and intending to use the same as genuine or that it may be used of genuine, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 7 years or with fine or with both. According to Section 489B and 489C of IPC, if any person sells to or buys or receives or having possession of counterfeiting currency notes, that he should be brought under the ambit of this rule. As in the above circumstances of the case, that Samir and others are engaged in selling, buying, and possession of counterfeiting currency, and the plea taken by may be of foreign, then possession or selling, buying of any counterfeiting foreign currency will be made liable under this section. Council would like to enlighten the above mentioned clause with the case. As mentioned in State of Kerala versus Matai Varghese, it was held that the prohibition against counterfeiting of currency notes in Section 489A operates in respect of currency notes of not only India but all the other countries also. Had the intention of the legislature been to restrict it only to Indian currency note, it would have used the expression. The expression currency notes have notes larger enough to cover currency notes of any country. Hence, Samir and others should be liable under this section. The third part of the second argument talks about Samir and others are liable for the offense under section 121 and 123 of IPC. 121 of IPC talks about waging war. Therefore, the elements of these sections are waging war or attempting to wage war or abetting the attempt to wage war against the government of India. Hence, the guilty person must be directly or indirectly connected with an act of war or aggression against India's sovereignty. Furthermore, every nation considers it a sovereign and takes stringent measures against any perpetrator trying to impede such sovereignty. The intention or purpose behind the act of waging war, that is mens rea, is vital for establishing the motivating factor. Striking at the sovereign authority of the ruler or the government using force and arms while disregarding government troops and security personnel deployed for maintaining public tranquility is an act of waging war. Section 123 talks about the concealing with the intent to facilitate design to wage war. As mentioned in State NCT Delhi versus Navjot Sandhu, it was held that the accused had knowledge of conspiracy and plans of terrorists to attack Parliament House. His illegal omission to apprise policy or magistrate of the design of the conspirator, which is an act of waging war, would make him liable for the offense under Section 123 of IPC. The fact that no charge was framed against him under Section 123 would not prejudice him because of charge of waging war and other allied offense are subject matter of the charges. Thus, Samir and others should be liable under Section 121 and 123 of IPC. The fourth part of the second argument talks about Samir and others are liable for the offense under Section 201 of IPC. Section 201 of IPC talks about causing disappearance of the evidence of offense or giving false information to screen offender. Whoever knowing or having reason to believe that an offense has been committed causes any evidence of the commission of that offense to disappear with intention of screening the offender from legal punishment, or with that intention gives any information respecting that of the offense which he knows or believes to be false. Ingredients of section 201 of IPC says, knowing or having reason to believe that offense has been committed, causing the disappearance of any offense, any evidence of the commission of that offense, with intention of screening the offender from illegal punishment, with the intention of screening the offender from legal punishment, gives any information respecting the offense which he knows or believes to be false. The accused must have either destroyed or caused disappearance of the evidence about the offense, or intentionally given false information about it so as to save the real offender from being punished. Or if the accused is charged with committing an offense which he knows or believes to be false, he must be liable under the section 201 of IPC for allegedly distorting the evidence about the offense or intentionally giving false information about it so as to save the real offender from being punished. As mentioned in Padmani Mahendra Bai Gad versus State of Gujarat, accused 1 and accused 2 were living in illicit relationship, and in pursuit of the same, they committed murder of deceased on the complainant, that is the brother-in-law of the deceased. The trial court convicted under section 201 of IPC for allegedly shifting the dead body and cleaning the place of offense, thereby destroying the evidence, and sentenced her for 2 years imprisonment, which was enhanced by High Court by 7 years. So, under this section, the above facts of this case, Kalu Mama has destroyed all the evidences from his house when NIA investigated into his house, so he must be liable under this section. The fifth part of the second argument talks about Samir and others are liable under the offense under section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. Section 15 of Unlawful Activity Prevention Act talks about damage to monetary stability of India by way of production or smuggling or circulation of high quality counterfeit paper currency, coin, or of any other material, or damage or destruction of any property in India or in foreign country used or intend to be used for the defense of India or in connection with any other purpose of the government of India, any state government, or any other agencies. Section 16 talks about if such act is a result to the death of the any person, be punishable with the death of life imprisonment, and shall also be liable to fine. In any other case, he shall be liable for the 5 years extent to life imprisonment and shall liable to fine. Section 17, punishment for raising funds for the terrorist act. The accused shall be punishable for imprisonment for not less than 5 years, but may extend to life imprisonment and shall also be liable to fine. Section 18, punishment for conspiracy. The accused shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years, which can extend for life imprisonment and shall also be liable to fine. Section 20, punishment for being member of the terrorist gang or organization. Any person who is a member of a terrorist gang or organization which is involved in terrorist act shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to life imprisonment and shall also be liable to fine. In as mentioned in Islam Unequal SK versus NIA, it is submitted that statements of protected witness show that the appellant associate himself with the other person, including Barkat Ali, from whose possession a huge amount of money of high value fake currency notes of the face value of 6465 was recovered. CDR also shows regular communication between appellant and other co-accused person. Therefore, Samir and others should come under the ambit of this offense. The third argument raises that any information received from accused discover any fact is admissible under court. According to Section 24 and 25 of Indian Evidence Act, any statement, admission, confession made to the police officer is not admissible under trial or other proceedings before court. Section 24, confession caused by inducement, threat, or promise when irrelevant in criminal proceedings. A confession made by an accused person is irrelevant in a criminal proceeding if the making of the confession appears to the court to have been caused by any inducement, threat, for promise having reference to the charge against the accused person, proceeding from the person in authority and sufficient in opinion of the court to give accused person which would appear to him reasonable for supposing that by making it he would gain any advantage or avoid any evil of the temporal nature in reference to proceeding against him. Section 25. Confession to police officer not to be proved. No confession made to police officer shall be proved as against a person accused of any offense. But Section 27 of Indian Evidence Act set proviso to it that if that information discovers some new facts, it will be admissible. So CDR records and other such information proves the involvement in terrorist attacks. Section 27. How much of information received from the accused may be proved, provided that when any fact is deposed to as discovered in consequence of the information received from a person accused of any offense in the custody of the officer, so much of such of information, whether if amount to a confession or not, as to relates distinctly to the fact thereby discovered may be proved. As mentioned in Deman Upadhyay versus State, evidence can be given only about the existence or non-existence of the fact in issue and of relevant fact and of no other matter. White Section 5 of Evidence Act. Section 27 does not make the evidence of discovery of a fact admissible. If it is admissible, it must be under Section 5. What it makes admissible is the evidence of the statement of the accused leading to the discovery of the fact. Though Section 27 is worded as if it was only an exception to the preceding sections, that is Section 25 and 26 and probably 24 also, it really is more than that and contains something not within the scope of the preceding section. It deals with the part of information which is wider term than confession, which is also that is dealt with within the preceding sections. Ignoring irrelevant matter, information must consist of a confession or an admission of a fact in issue or relevant fact. The part of it that is confirmed by subsequent facts and is made receivable in evidence by Section 27 must be confession or admission of a fact in issue or relevant fact. If the whole confession is confirmed by subsequent fact, the whole is receivable in evidence under Section 27, notwithstanding the bans imposed by the preceding sections. In the above case, the confession made by Samir, Monu, and Kalu Mama will be admissible with the accordance to Section 27 of Indian Evidence Acts, as their statement, confession, admissions lead to discovery of new facts, that is CDR, FICN notes, examinations. So the statement made by them in front of police are admissible. Council would like to know if there is any question.
Uh, how much amount was recovered from Samir?
Sorry, sir.
How much amount was recovered from both the accused persons?
It was 250, no, 10 lakhs, sir,
From Samir and Monu,
from both
10
the
lakhs,
parties.
5 lakhs each, na?
Yes.
Yes. And what was the purpose of their visit to Delhi?
They were they were organizing uh, they were planning for a bomb blast. So they have to submit the FICN notes to Peter so that they can plan the bomb blast.
No, you admit that there was a planning for bomb blast. For that, they were carrying money.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Were they aware that what was in the bag? The bag was
Yes,
they
sir.
were carrying.
Yes, they were aware.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
the council humbly seeks permission to proceed with the prayer.
And what about the incident about Peter, Who died of food poisoning and all.
Sir, he died of food poisoning in the
Hmm.
hospital when they went to when NIA went to check him.
Hmm. Any statement was recorded prior to his death or something or not?
No, no, no. Before NIA could go, he already died.
Then the purpose could not be sufficed. How? What was his intention there?
Sorry, Judge, whose intention?
Peter and all, because he was the
Them.
person.
So their main intention was to plan a bomb blast on Indian Army convoy. Sameer and Monu had to give FIC notes to Peter. Then they'll have a bomb blast on Indian Army convoy.
Okay, continue the prayer.
Much obliged. Whereof, in the light of the issue raised, facts cited, case referred, arguments advanced, and authorities cited, it is most humbly prayed and implored before the Honorable Court of New Delhi, it may be graciously pleased to adjudge and declare that Sameer and others should be liable under Section 120B, 489B, 489C, 121, and 123. 201 of IPC under Section 16, 17, 18 of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, under Section 32 of POTA Act, and under Section 15 of TADA Act, or also pass any other order that court may deem fit in the favor of in the favor of appellant to meet the ends of the equity, justice, and good conscience. For this act of kindness, plaintiff shall be duty bound forever. Prayer.
With the permission of the honorable judges, I may call upon team 523
Yes.
Okay.
for defense. Team 523, kindly mention your time division and
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Paper one shall be taking 20 minutes and speaker.
please repeat the time division. You are not
Uh,
audible.
Speaker one shall be taking 20 minutes and speaker two will be taking 10 minutes.
Okay, continue.
Uh, if it may please the court, I'm speaker number one and I'm appearing on behalf of the accused in the case of state NIA versus Sameer and others. The council shall address the issue whether the accused is guilty under section 121, 123, 489B, and 489C and 489D of Indian Penal Code 1860, and whether the charges pressed against the accused under the Unlawful Prevention Activity Act is justified. My co-counsel shall be addressing the issue of whether the evidence by investigating agencies enough to uphold the convictions. In addressing the issue, that is, whether the accused is guilty of the offences under the sections of IPC as mentioned before, the council humbly contends that in the present case,
Just a minute. Just a minute. Yogesh sir,
Yes, sir. Yes.
sir, your uh, mic is on. That voice is reverting back.
No. Okay.
That is reverting back. That's why it is echoing. Thank you, sir. Continue.
yes, my lordship. If your lordship is well versed with the fact of the case, the counsel of the accused would like to begin with would proceed with the submissions.
Yes, yes.
So first, in addressing the issue, that is issue number one, whether the accused is guilty of the offences under the sections of IPC as I mentioned before, the counsel humbly contends that in the present case, penal action imposed on the accused is not valid. I will be addressing three key issues, that is charges of waging war has been falsely charged on the accused, and that the accused did not conceal
any existence of a design to wage war against the state, and that the accused had no knowledge that they were carrying counterfeited notes. Section 121 of IPC enumerates upon the waging of war against the government of India, which states that whoever wages war against the government of India or attempts to wage such war or abets the waging of such war shall be punished with death or imprisonment. To prove waging of war, it is the purpose and intention, the object that they have in view, which congregates and assembles them together, which gives the impulse in their arming and in their rising, in which constitute treason. So, in order to constitute high treason by levying war, there must be an insurrection. There must be a force accompanying that insurrection, and it must be for the accomplishment of an object of a general nature. The Supreme Court has observed in case of Muhammad Jamiluddin Nasir versus State of West Bengal that principles are to be kept in mind in cases involving application of section 121, 122, 121A of the Indian Penal Code. The court observed that not all violent behavior would fall within the prescription of waging war as contemplated under the sections 121, 121A, 122 read with section 120B. And the object sought to be achieved to make a case for the application of 121 should be directed against the sovereignty of the state and not merely commission of a crime, even if that happens to be of higher magnitude. The intention or the purpose behind the act of waging war, that is mens rea, is vital for establishing motivating factor. Striking the sovereign authority of the ruler or against the government using force and arm while disregarding government troops and security personnel deployed for maintaining public tranquility is an act for waging war. However, in this case at hand, the accused neither had the mens rea or nor had the knowledge about their action. Further, the investigating agency did not provide any substantive evidence with regard to the same. The second key issue, that is, the accused did not conceal the existence of a design to wage war against the state. For proving the offense under section 123, which the ingredients of the said sections include that if the person commits an illegal act or omission, also if the person conceals or facilitates the design to wage war against the state. By such concealment, the person is likely to know that such a thing will facilitate war. So, whereas for proving the offense under section 123 IPC, the prosecution is required to prove that there was a concealment by an act or by an illegal omission of existence of a design to wage war against the government of India, and he intended by such concealment to facilitate, or he knew that such concealment would facilitate the waging of war. In the present case, my lordship, the accused was charged under section 121 for waging war against the government of India, and the concealment of under section 123 for concealment of such fact by an act or illegal omission. Therefore, in case of Shaukat Hussain Guru versus State, it was held that under such circumstances, this will constitute an offense, and the accused can be convicted under section 123. However, in the case at hand, investigating agency only admitted the statement of the witness recorded in the police custody, which is not admissible under section 25 of Evidence Act. And the investigating agency did not provide any conclusive proof that the accused concealed the existence of a design to wage war against the state. So, and subsequently, the accused had no knowledge that they were carrying counterfeited notes. Intention to use counterfeit currency note being an essential ingredient of the offense under section 489B and 489C of IPC, prosecution is no doubt saddled with the liability to establish such intention or attempt on the part of the accused to use such counterfeit notes. In the case at hand, no material is brought on record by the prosecution to show that the appellant had the requisite mens rea. In the statement given to the police, A2 mentioned, I and Monu didn't know that in bag we are carrying fake currency note. Further, it is also not shown any specific question with regard to currency notes being fake or counterfeit was put to the appellant in this examination under section 313 of CRPC whatsoever, which suggests that the appellant had made any effort to use a counterfeit currency note. Since evidence on the issue is lacking manifestly, hence the conviction of the appellant under section 489 B and C of IPC cannot be sustained. On these facts, accused cannot be held guilty of the charges framed under sections 489B and 489C. This subsequently takes me to my second issue, that the charges pressed against the accused under UAPA are not justified. The counsel on behalf of the accused humbly submits that the charges pressed against them under UAPA are not justifiable. There is no substantial evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt of the accused's guilt. Counsel contends that the ingredients of the offences of the section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of UAPA are not made out even in the plain reading of the factual allegation level against the accused. And accordingly, the additional limitations, conditionalities, and restrictions contained in section 43D clause 5 of UAPA would not apply. To attract UAPA, a prima facie case should be made out. In any case, the degree of satisfaction to be recorded by the court for opining that there are reasonable grounds for believing that the accusation against the accused is prima facie true is lighter than the degree of satisfaction to be recorded for considering a discharge application or framing of charges in relation to the offences under the 1967 Act. The main ingredient of section 15 of UAPA, which defines a terrorist act, in this act it has been added that fake currency, possession of fake currency will be constituted as a terrorist activity. However, in the present case, the accused did not have any knowledge that they are in possession of fake currency notes. Section 17 of UAPA punishes for raising funds for terrorist act. So the element of knowledge is to be stressed here. A person is liable only under this act only when he/she knows that such funding is used for terrorist activity. According to the explanation of section 17, raising funds shall include raising or collecting or providing funds through production or smuggling or circulation of high quality counterfeit Indian currency. The statements of A1 and A2 do not disclose whether they were aware about the fake Indian currency in the possession. It has also come in the statements of defendant witness 1 and defendant witness 2 that they were only asked to carry a bag from one place to the another and hand it over to Peter. In Ashu Mondal versus State of West Bengal, the court held that mere possession does not necessarily indicates that there was malintention or intention to use such fake currency note. Intention to use counterfeit currency notes being an essential ingredient of the offense under section 489B and 489C of IPC. The accused has been charged under section 18 of UAPA. However, the most important section 18 of UAPA punishes for conspiracy to conduct a terrorist act, but in the present case, there is no proof that the accused had any conspiracy, as they did not have any connection or any the chain of circumstantial evidence do not prove that the accused were linked or were connected in any way. So the most important ingredient of a criminal conspiracy is an agreement for an illegal act. Conspiracy continues to subsist. It is executed or rescinded or frustrated by choice or necessity, as stated in Damodar versus State of Rajasthan. From the above facts, it can be inferred that the main conspirator is absconding, that is accused A5. And from the facts, nothing to show that the accused was in any manner connected with any terror organizations. So there is no established connection of A1 and A2 with the main conspirators and other accused. Subsequently, they were only carrying a bag that was asked by accused 3 without any knowledge of fake Indian currency notes. In Mukesh and ANR versus State of NCT Delhi and others, the court held that prosecution has to produce evidence not only to show that each of the accused has knowledge of object of conspiracy but also of the agreement. Therefore, from the above mentioned cases and sections, it can be inferred that there is no element of active participation as there was no knowledge of the act. Death of Peter, that is accused 4, questions about the investigation as it was adversely affected, and the co-accused in this case had no knowledge that the money shall be utilized for a terror attack. The clauses punishing membership and support for terror organization exemplify the vagueness at the heart of the statute. The counsel of the accused contends that the ingredients of the offences alleged under sections 121, 123, 489B and 489C IPC and section 16, 17, 18 and 20 of UAPA are not made out and accordingly should be discharged of these charges. If your lordship is satisfied with the argument, I would like the co-counsel to proceed with the third issue.
Okay. Your voice is not coming, speaker 2. Open your mic. Switch on your mic.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, now you are.
Okay. So may it please the court that I am the co-counsel of the accused, and shall I begin?
Yes, continue.
So according to our third argument, whether the evidence adduced by the investigating agency enough to uphold conviction, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that in the given factual matrix, the evidence presented are not sufficient to prove the charges levied on the A1, A2, and A3. The evidence presented are not substantive in nature. As Section 21 of the Evidence Act states, admissions are relevant and may be proved as against the person who makes them or his representative in interest, but they cannot be proved or on behalf of the person who makes them or by his representative in interest, except in the following cases. And I would like to throw a light upon the second clause of Section 21. An admission may be proved by or on behalf of the person making it when it consists of a statement of the existence of any state of mind or body relevant or in issue made at or about the time when such state of mind or body existed and is accompanied by conduct rendering its falsehood and improbable. What a party himself admits to be true may reasonably presume to be so, and until that presumption is rebutted, the fact admitted should be taken to be established. And in the present case, in Shafiquddin versus Mehboob Ilahi, it was held that an admission of party is not admissible unless it is put to that party. In Upendranath versus Bhupendranath, without discussing Section 21 and without mentioning the earlier Privy Council case of Narpa Singh and relying upon Bal Gangadhar Tilak's case, the court stated that certain statements of the parties could not be used in evidence unless they were put to the parties for the explanation in view of discrepancy with the evidence needed. Therefore, third-party witness or statement by them cannot be admitted as they contradict the evidence. Coming to the Section 25 of the Evidence Act, which states that no confession made to a police officer shall be proved as against a person accused of an offence. As per Section 25 of Indian Evidence Act, confession to a police officer cannot be used against them in the court. No confession made to a police officer shall be proved against the person accused of any offence. This section aims to zealously protect the accused becoming the victim of his own delusion or the mechanization of the others to self-incriminate in crime. The confession, therefore, is not received with an assurance if its source be above and free from the remote test train of suspicions. In the present case, in Ram Kishan Singh versus Hamid Kaur, the Privy Council and the Honorable Supreme Court have categorically held that the statement recorded under Section 164 CRPC are not substantive evidence. It can be used only to corroborate the statements of the witness to contradict them. And in the second case, in the case of State of UP versus MK Anthony 1985, it has been ruled by the Supreme Court that Section 162 does not provide the evidence of a witness in the court becomes inadmissible if it is established that the statements of the witness recorded during investigation was signed by him at the instance of the police officer. The bar created by Section 162 CRPC in respect of the use of any statement recorded by the police during the course of investigation is applicable only where such statement is sought to be used at any inquiry or trial in respect of any offence under investigation at the time when such statement was made. Therefore, the statements of A1, A2, and A3 do not support the statement given by PW2. The statement recorded under Section 164 of CRPC of A1, A2, and A3 cannot be proved as a substantive evidence. And coming to the next point, thus, that the chain of the circumstantial evidence cannot be established. In the connection Jawaharlal Das versus State of Odisha, the Honorable Apex Court observed as under, no doubt the offence is a shocking one, but the gravity of the offence cannot by itself overweigh as far as legal proof is concerned. Invariably, in such cases, a person last seen with the victim unless otherwise there are circumstances prima facie exonerating them would be the prime suspect, but in the ultimate judicial adjunction, suspicious, however strong, cannot be allowed to take the place of the proof. In Shahat Birichan Sarda versus State of Maharashtra, it was stated that when attempting to convict on circumstantial evidence alone, the court must be firmly satisfied of the following 5 things. Number 1 would be the circumstances from which the conclusion of guilt is to be drawn should be fully established. The circumstances must be or should not be established. Number 2, the fact so established should be consistent only with the hypothesis of the guilt of the accused, that is to say, they should not be explained or any other hypothesis except the accused is guilty. Number 3 would be the circumstances should be of conclusive nature and tendency. D would be they should exclude every possible hypothesis and accept the one to be proved. And the last but not the least, there must be a chain of evidence so complete as not to leave any reasonable ground for the conclusion consistent with the innocence of the accused, and must show that in all human probability the act must have been done by the accused. In the case at hand, a certain chain of circumstances cannot be established. The arrest of A1, A2 led to the arrest of A3, which revealed about the larger conspiracy of terrorist activity, and A5 planned to execute bomb blasts on Indian Army convoy. However, the death of the co-accused A4 has adversely affected the investigation as mentioned in the facts, subsequently affecting to establish a conclusive fact. Also, the A5 has also been absconding with no conclusive information about his whereabouts. The statement of PW2 also reveals that it was Kalu Mama who used his anti-national slogan, India not being a country worth living, any country of intolerance, Dulhan ko sajana hai, in a public gathering against which an FIR was filed. Later withdrawn, it was revealed by PW2 and A5 seemed quite disturbed and stressed to Kalu Mama's behavior. The only person communicating with A5 was Kalu Mama and no one else. The statement of Kalu Mama are not consistent and evasive. If your lordship is satisfied with the argument, may I proceed with the prayer?
Yes, proceed.
In the light of the issues raised, arguments advanced, and authorities cited, the Council of the State humbly prays that the Honorable Court be pleased adjudge uphold and declare the accused A1, 1, 2, and 3 be acquitted of Section 120B, 489B, 489C, Section 121, and Section 123, Section 201 of IPC, and Section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967 as amended. The accused 1, 2, 3 be acquitted. Section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967 as amended, and pass at any other order, direction, or relief that it may deem fit in the best interest of justice, fairness, equity, and good conscience. For the act of kindness, this shall forever thank.
Yes, you tell for team 2 that they were carrying these bags unknowingly, but there was no other bag found from their possession. Why they were carrying these bags unknowingly? And you are saying that it is not a ground that they were not aware about this money was in their bag. What is the explanation to that effect? Because there was no other bag found with in their possession, and somebody handed over the bag to them and they carried it. Your voice again. Open your mic.
You are not audible.
Am I audible?
Yes.
My lordship, there is no witness that the statement that the bag was with them. There is no CCTV footage that the bag was with them. There is no independent witness that the bag was with them as well.
No, from the train they were found in possession in custody of the bag that they were handing over the bag
My
and
lordship,
nothing.
can you repeat?
From their possession, they were found with the bag.
My lordship, it can be planted because there was no independent witness as well. They got the secret information from somewhere, but they didn't get the CCTV footage or independence. As you can see that the railway station is a public place. There should be some independent witness who could have seen that they were carrying the counterfeited notes or something like that.
But they were arrested from the train, from the general coach compartment.
No, they were arrested at the Delhi railway station.
It has been stated in your.
As per your statement, DW1, it states that he was carrying a bag.
Yes.
Yes, he was carrying a bag. Now, from that bag, money was recovered.
Okay. That is the police statement.
And what was the purpose of your visit to Delhi?
क्या था?
What was the purpose of your visit? Can you explain that? You were carrying only one bag. From that bag, money was recovered. No other bag, as my brother said, that no other bag was recovered.
सिग्नल नहीं आ रहा है क्या? My lordship, I'm sorry. Can you repeat? My signal is not good.
Okay. No, I was saying that you were traveling with only the one bag, na? From
Yes,
that money
yes,
was.
my lordship. They were just there to do visit, as they mentioned in their. They didn't accept anything in the custody as well. It can be planted as well. We don't know because there is no independent witness, and according there's no independent witness, and if there were any witness, the research should have been happened. and there is no clear chain of custody as well. And as you can see that they were carrying the all identity cards and the real cash as well. The real cash was also been found with, and the statement given by them or the Kalu Mama or by anyone is not admissible because it was in the police custody.
Why didn't you place any defense evidence, defense witness for that?
Sorry.
You didn't brought any defense witness in your for your defense. Can you?
It's the case of acquittal, sir, my lordship.
I'm asking, why didn't you put forth any defense witness in your favor?
The defense witness, my lordship, as you can see the statement of PW2, the PW2, it was said that that both the accused and I didn't bring the defense witness because this is the first trial.
First trial. First trial doesn't mean that you cannot bring a defense witness. अपने defense में तो कुछ लाओगे?
Yes, my lord, but as you can see the statement of PW2, it was clearly mentioned by them that both the accused were trying. Yeah, the statement was this is not the case of this is the competition.
And from prosecution side, can you hear me? As one
Yes,
speaker, one or two.
yes, sir. She can hear you.
Why didn't you made any public witness from there? You caught them, apprehended them from the railway station. Neither any CCTV footage nor any public witness, nothing.
Sir, is this for prosecution?
Yes.
Yes.
Sir, there was a witness under independent witness was there. Under paragraph 17.23, there was when search was done, there was presence of witness when the seizure was made.
What he says?
Under para 17.2.
17.3 para.
So under 17.3, it was clearly mentioned that search was done in the presence of independent witness. And also seizure memo was made.
Who was that independent witness?
Sorry, sir.
Who was that independent witness?
It was just a minute.
The name of the independent witness.
Just a second, please. Ravi Kumar.
Was he working on the railway station? Or he was a
He was
passenger?
just an independent witness.
No, independent witness. What was his status? He was working in railway staff, or he was a passenger, or any other commuter who was found in the railway station.
And what was the source of information?
Caesar memo.
No
No,
source of
no. Source of information.
source of information.
So police officer got information through suspicious. Through information.
Oh,
They got credible information.
from where? That's I want to know. No? From where they got the information?
So it was suspicious. It was not mentioned in the stated case. It was suspicious.
It was through some phone call.
Yes, sir.
So that's all.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Neeraj sir, any question if you want to ask?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
I was just asking for any CCTV footage from the railway station were recovered or not. Any footage was seized or not?
No, sir.
No. Any explanation why they were not seized? Any notice to the station master?
There were no CCTV in railway station.
No railway RPF member or from the railway station, railway police force staff. Did you interrogated any person from their family that they were traveling, why they were traveling, any such thing?
There was no interrogation by the family, but we give information through arrest memo to their family members that they got arrested for the specific offense.
Okay. Anything, sir?
No, no, that's all.
Lord, with your prior permission, may I end the session and or any
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I appreciate both the teams. They were very good in their arguments, and wish you luck for the in future. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Congrats.
Thank you, sir.
Best wishes to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Can we leave now? Court master?
Yes, Malone. Yes, Malone. You may.